Meera, first of all, welcome to the episode of Humans Behind CX. Right. We basically hear stories, we hear strategies, mindsets, all the rest of the things from people who are actually implementing that customer experience within an organization, uh, b- or I would say any kind of an experience management, whether it's related to an internal structure or related to partners, customers, and all those things. For the rest of the world who's exactly seeing this, today's episode is all about something very fundamental, which we'll be talking about culture today. Uh, because no matter how great your tool, strategy, or technology is, if it's the culture which isn't prioritized related to the customers, employees, or anywhere, I would say, that's the actual flow, I would say, which exactly an organization requires in terms of making a change with respect to any kind of a thing which they are looking forward to. So for everyone, we have Meera Rajendran today. She's the founder of Art of the Matter, and she's a former culture custodian and the head of CX at India First Life. Meera, thank you for joining us today, and it's a pleasure hosting you at Humans Behind CX. We will be really glad if you can just help us out a little bit, telling us a little bit about yourself. What does Art of the Matter does, and then how you're shaping CX, or how you're helping organizations shaping CX with Art of the Matter.
Sure. Hi, Jayesh. First of all, thank you for having me and for giving me this airtime. Yeah. It's good to be here, and I'm really, really glad because I can see that CX is finally getting the space and the voice that it deserves. So that's really great. It validates my decision actually founding Out of the Matter
Oh.
after having run the CX function,
Hmm.
in many organizations for so long, right? A little bit about myself. I have about 18 years of experience in the corporate sector. Primarily, my longer stints have been in BFSI companies, but I've also worked in brand consulting. I've worked in food and facilities management, building employee experiences. I've worked in market research. So I've worked in many different functions across the years. That being said, CX has always been a portfolio that I've held probably over 12 years now. 13 or 14 years, CX has been one of the functions that I have led in
Hmm.
whichever organization that I've been in. I've seen CX evolve. Okay. I started my career in Axis Bank and actually founded the first CX team there. So I
Oh,
mean,
nice.
I was one employee, and then that was me. The CX team was just me, right,
Yeah.
at Axis Bank. At a time when CX was not even like a searchable term, like nobody knew what CX was,
Hmm, 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 hmm.
and I was the whole and soul for the entire bank. So that was just one person. Starting from there to today, where there are entire ecosystems, marketplaces built around CX, and it's really found a seat at the at the board level. So strategic discussions around how to retain customers, how to make customer experience a differentiator, and really make it give companies a competitive edge in the market. So I've seen that evolution over the years, and I'm really really glad that this podcast is happening because it allows me to share some views as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Mira. And when you told me that you were one of those people who actually founded CXS at Axis Bank, it's been like, NPS was founded by Bain and Company way back 2008,
Yeah.
and you've been there with Axis since then. I would say, it's great. It's actually very delightful to have someone who's actually been there from the starting itself, where CX was not even a terminology. People used to call it customer support or something like that. People didn't even know what exactly an experience is. It's really glad to have you here, Mira. To just wanted to understand from you, Mira, if I ask you a basic, very normal question. So you've been there in the customer experience domain since very long. You've had a fascinating journey across customer experience, culture, and leadership. So what inspired you to focus on building culture as a foundation for CX? Because I've had a word with a lot of leaders, right? And you majorly focused on culture, like that.
No.
culture as a building agent for CX is very important. So what motivated you over here?
Uh, so you've heard that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. I think culture is similarly the bedrock of CX.
Hmm.
Okay. What is CX at the end of the day? Right? It comes down to that. CX is basically um, how organizations decide a customer should experience their brand.
Correct.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that can be any kind of experience. Okay. So it could be in how I interact with an employee, it could be in the web screen that I see, it could be in how I search for you on Google and what the results are that come up. In today's day and age, it could be how AI summarizes the information that is there about me as an organization
Hmm.
and then presents it to you as a customer.
Absolutely.
Um, and too often, organizations think of only the first one, which is how people of a company talk to a customer, right? Which is typically customer support or
Correct.
sales, right? And most organizations think of only this
Hmm.
principle when they talk about CX. So and therefore CX efforts are relegated to the soft services or it's tracked as a metric, and somehow the two never meet, right? But the guiding principle behind all of this is actually culture, right?
Got
Somebody
it.
in your organization is designing that web page.
Hmm.
Okay, there is someone in your organization, and I'm being very careful to say there is a person designing your web page or taking calls on how your web page should look. There is a person who is deciding how long it should be before I give a customer a refund.
Hmm.
There is a person who's saying, listen, when a customer calls, pick up the phone and say this.
Hmm.
Okay, whether you like it or not, these decisions are taken by humans, right? They're crafted by humans.
Correct.
Problem is a lot of the time they're not crafted consciously. Okay, keeping the customer in mind, they're crafted
Hmm.
for many different agendas often, right? They're crafted for efficiency, these experiences are crafted for cost cutting, right? And it's natural because all these functions have their targets, okay, and the reason
Correct.
they exist, okay, operations and the reason it exists,
Hmm.
okay, does not necessarily always take into account the customer's point of view. Okay, they have
Correct.
other goals, they have goals of efficiency saving money, saving resources, being better at what they do, bringing more competition, things like that. So and therefore because people are taking all these decisions, it comes down to culture. How are you as a leader influencing all the people in your organization to constantly think about the customer, and are you doing it consciously or not, right? And that's why I think that CX, great as a metric, fabulous, you have a metric, you track it, but are you building a culture that allows people to keep the customer first? Very very important conversation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because see, again, what you mentioned, I just wanted to add a little bit to it that, it's very important for the people inside the organization to be, I would say, empathetic in terms of customer, just to make sure that they actually, are there helping people out, making sure there's a ease in terms of any kind of a whether complaint flowing in or whether request flowing in, just to make sure that uh, everything not just happens on time, but it should be a solution for that particular person who's coming out to you. So you're bang on what exactly you said. So Mira, you were there at India First Life, right? You were leading both employee experience and customer experience over there, right? So how did these two intersect in shaping the culture over there?
um, so just first of all, a small clarification, I wasn't leading employee experience, I
Okay.
had a role to play in creating employee experience as it
Oh,
pertained to culture.
got it.
Okay. So I wasn't involved in like creating processes for employees, like if an employee is
Hmm.
being onboarded. That's
Hmm.
not something I would normally get involved in, though I did play some part, in all of this as well. How employee and customer experience intersects is actually very simple. There's enough data
Hmm.
world over, global studies that say that, when your employees are happier, the customers are happier.
Correct.
And intuitively, I don't think there's anything you can argue with, right? I mean, you have happy
Absolutely.
employees, you have happier customers because employees are motivated, they're more productive, less sick days. You just generally have a better working organism. right?
Absolutely. It's
People
directly
refer to
proportional to that. Yeah.
Correct. People refer to organizations as machines. I prefer to think of it as a living, breathing organism that grows,
Hmm.
right? And so you have a better working organism. Okay. And one of the things that we wanted to do at India First Life was to really tightly stitch this together and prove that there is a correlation, right, between happier employees and happier customers. Okay. Let's take a simple example. What are the aims that you have as an organization when you set up a company and you're running it to some scale, right? Say you have 5,000 employees, which India First did at the time that I was working there. We had approximately 5,000 employees. How do you ensure that the empowerment that you give the employees actually fulfills their requirements when it comes to actually meeting customer goals? Okay, let me give you a very simple example.
Hmm.
Is your contact center authorized to refund a customer without it taking 3-4 days for someone to approve it?
Got it.
Right, very simple
Yeah.
example.
Hmm.
Okay, the less you load at an employee level from a process and mundane task perspective, the happier they are. It's called empowerment, right? You're giving them decision making capability, you're giving them budgets, you're giving them
Absolutely.
resources. You give them this and it leads to a better outcome for a customer,
Hmm.
right? So at India First Life, we basically said, okay, what are the key areas that we want to develop as employee strengths that will allow them to keep customers first? Okay, how can we empower employees? How can we make them more accountable for customer outcomes?
Hmm.
Okay, how can we build better innovation? Okay, because all of these lead to better customer outcomes. Okay, how can we build more innovative teams? How can we So we identified a slew of practices that we wanted to imbibe within our culture, right? And we consciously developed programs that would encourage this. So that was the intersection, and that's the role that I played.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
um, just one more small example,
Sure,
just to
sure,
make
sure.
it
Go ahead.
really
Yeah.
really practical, right? and
Mhm.
and people wonder, so both culture and customer experience is often left to one team in an organization.
Hmm.
uh, but there is a case to be made for everybody owning culture and everybody owning customer experience, right?
Hmm.
For example, employee onboarding that I just spoke about today is typically an HR process, right? They decide what documents the customer employee has to fill and how they're onboarded and portals and a bunch of things and what happens when an employee comes, etc. One of the things that we said is that from day one, an employee needs to be able to explain our organization to a customer,
Correct.
right? And therefore, what are we doing at an induction stage or an onboarding stage to inculcate pride? Okay, to inspire.
Hmm.
Okay, to really make employees evangelists,
Hmm.
right? How do you build that culturally? What are we doing at an induction and process stage to build this?
Got it.
Again, better customer outcome is the outcome. That kind
Absolutely.
of thing.
Correct. See, you're bang on that because see, the person who's joining in new, is like a clean slate for the organization. It depends on you what exactly you start writing on it, and that's what builds in. Right.
Correct.
So that's very true that culture starts from the day the person enters the organization as an employee.
Yeah.
Right. I remember, I met a very senior leader and I was just discussing a little bit about employee experience with them. So he told me that, employees are like, if we talk about, because you were talking about an organism and something like that. So he said that if you consider an organization a human body, the employees are the gut. If the
Mm.
gut is healthy, the mind, every organ will function properly. But if not, then you're having a problem every day.
Yeah.
Right. So, I very well remembered when he said that. So I was just, when you were talking about it, I was like, a lot of people have a very similar thought about what exactly,
Yes.
they were talking about. So, Meera, my next question would be that, there are a lot of organizations who, talk about customer first, they have a mindset that customer should be first, but they struggle in terms of translating it in their daily behavior. So what do you think
Mhm.
that, what's the missing link in that, the culture aspect in that organization?
Okay. So there could be many missing links, to be honest. Okay. It really depends on the stage of evolution that the company is in. Listen, the first few years that an organization typically sets up, they're firefighting every day, right?
Correct.
And they're struggling to make sales, they're struggling to get some money in, and there's cash flow and a bunch of other things, right? And honestly speaking, I find that it's very difficult to give a customer priority, unless, and this is where they really actually manage to sort of balance it out, is because there's a lot of ownership in a smaller organization, right, at an employee level, and therefore somehow
Absolutely.
it just works. Okay,
Hmm.
because each individual employee actually feels the customer's pain, because they're doing so many different things, and they
Correct.
probably typically interact with customers. If at the very least they interact with internal customers and partners and stuff like that, so they're able to resolve problems really quickly, and they don't have typically huge hierarchies and approval processes and a bunch of other things, right? So in a smaller organization the challenges are different. Okay, in a large organization, from what I've seen, right, and experienced, the gap comes in this say do behavior. So there is, I don't think there is a single leader who says don't do it.
Hmm.
Everyone says do it, like prioritize the customer, do it first, right? And they say it a lot, but do employees see them doing it? Okay.
Hmm.
Do employees see them actually prioritizing the customer? Maybe they are. In many cases, in fact, they are, right? I mean, you and I both know if the customer is not does not have a seat at the table, then business doesn't happen. Okay, so
Absolutely.
if you have large companies in India, obviously business is happening, and to a large extent, obviously organizations are prioritizing the customer, right? But do your employees down the line see you do it
Hmm.
visibly? Do they see you make these tough decisions about, if I am giving the employee, the customer, this benefit, it's going to cost me X, but it's important to give it, and I'm going to
Hmm.
take that X and resource it from somewhere else, which means I'm cutting benefits somewhere else, right? And those are the decisions that leaders make all the time, but they typically don't make it in front of an audience, and they don't realize, the front line doesn't realize that these decisions are actually happening in the back end. Okay, so one big important thing is to visibly communicate through action how much you are prioritizing the customer, and this does not happen in Indian companies. You see it a little bit better in MNCs.
Hmm.
Okay, because just because of the way they're structured, but you do not see it so much in Indian companies. Decisions are typically taken within a closed group, right? There will
Correct.
be four people who take consistently decisions, right? So this is a big gap. Okay, and if
Correct.
I know that my leader, if I can give an employee a benefit, if it's within my authority to give an employee a benefit, I should know that it is not only tolerated, but that it is actually encouraged, that my leader will feel happy, or my manager will feel happy and will feel proud of me, or will feel like I've really lived up to the company's culture by taking that decision which is in favor of customer.
Hmm.
Okay, and for that I need to see my manager do it.
Correct. So there should be transparency in terms of what exactly, a decision which has been taken by a management to the, on-field employee who's actually there, who's actually implementing. It shouldn't be just I would say a topic which comes down, but it should be something which has been seen that, these are the things which are to be done. These are the things which are done already and
Yeah.
just need to implement it in that particular front. Got it. Yeah, that's actually true. That's actually
Because
true.
this accountability is built very beautifully in Indian companies when it comes to cost saving.
Correct.
Okay, you will find everyone up and down the line very, very conscious about the money they spend on behalf of the organization. It's like they're
Hmm.
taking it out of their own pockets,
Hmm.
right? No, I can't spend this money. My manager will not approve. No, the company will not be okay with this. Or I know what I can spend and cannot spend, but I'm not going to reach the limit. I somehow feel very, very good about having saved the company money. Do I feel the same amount of pride and the same amount of, inherent, um, let's say, satisfaction by giving customers great outcomes?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Got it. Yeah, yeah,
because managers
absolutely.
validate you when you save money. Everyone gives you get an award, you go up
Yeah,
on stage, right? You're told, wow, this guy saved so much money for the company. These are the people who are promoted.
correct.
Okay, that same framework, if you apply to any outcome, it will work.
Hmm.
I mean, whether it is customer focus or not, right? But it has to come from the top.
Absolutely. So, we were talking a lot about leadership over here, Mira. So, how do you align leadership intent and frontline actions to be built like a constant CX culture? Like, we were talking about transparency over here. That's one particular point. But again, there would be multiple other factors as well, like, where the leadership and the frontline, people are not interconnected. So, what do you think should be brought in as a culture over here just to make sure everything moves smooth?
So this is where measurement comes in, honestly speaking, right? Because typically you don't have a meeting round between a
Hmm.
CEO and somebody who is, say, the contact center agent.
Correct.
Very difficult to have a conversation, right? Because you're talking about
Absolutely.
completely different things. Okay.
Absolutely.
And this is where measurement comes in. And I don't necessarily mean NPS or a survey kind of mechanism, but are you measuring good customer outcome? Okay, less complaints,
Hmm.
retention, lifetime value, upsell, cross sell. Are you measuring these good customer outcomes? Okay, and ensuring that you are able to connect with your frontline on it. That means that it needs to be part of your reviews. It needs
Hmm.
to be part of dashboards, decks, presentations. The frontline needs to know that the CEO cares, or that
Hmm.
the leadership cares, or that the management cares about
Got it.
these metrics. And that's really the role that metrics play, which is that they manage to connect this hierarchy top to bottom, right? How you do it is also very important. For example, NPS is like a classic example, right? Organizations implement NPS and then they hold frontline responsible for the NPS number,
Hmm.
which is, I mean, this is something I don't agree with at all. How can somebody who is doing your food delivery be held responsible for the quality of the product,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely. These are two
You
different
can't.
matrices altogether. Yes.
Correct. And the solution so far has been ask another question about delivery and ask another question about about the quality of the food.
Correct.
I mean, it's a haphazard, non-practical solution at best. Okay, but what you can hold that person accountable for, okay, is response rate.
Hmm.
Okay, so what you can say is, and this is where the person who comes to your door says, "Madam, 9 de do." He should not be saying 9 de do. He should just be saying
Correct.
rating de do, right?
Huh.
um, because what you would have done is you would have nudged the customer to at least provide some information back to you.
Hmm.
Okay, and feedback is the lubricant on which this entire system works.
Correct.
Yeah. So how you implement the metrics are very important. Okay, but the metrics are honestly what connect the top to the bottom, and it gives you at least a starting point.
I get it, but I have a follow-up question on this, Mira. You said that the delivery person should be responsible for a response rate, right? But again, like as a neutral person who's outside the organization, don't you think that a person who's going there delivering and he's asking for a feedback, he would definitely ask for a positive feedback because that's human nature. Right. So don't you think that would bias my rating altogether? Because a person, there might be a possibility he has a different, mindset at that point of time. And if I ask him, if I nudge him to give me a positive feedback, he might not. Right, but the rating process over there would be very different because if a person who's willingly giving a feedback is something, the actual rating would be. But if I ask, look, for example, you come in a store, right? I'm an executive over there, and I'm after you, ma'am. If you can just rate me 9, that would be really great. There might be a possibility that you want to give me an 8 or you want to give me a 7, a neutral rating. But seeing me over there, you don't have an option and you press a 9
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, okay, ab jao.
No, you're absolutely right, and this happens. Okay, so the first thing to realize is there is no system without bias.
Correct.
Okay, so you had there are multiple facets that I wanted to address in this question of yours. So I'm just going to take it right from the top. The
Sure.
first one you have to realize is there is no system without bias.
Hmm.
Okay, and companies do design it that way. I wouldn't say on purpose, but there are reasons companies design it that way. It's not necessarily to eliminate negative feedback.
Hmm.
Okay, it is about the fact that if you have broken a service, I mean, if a promise has been broken to the customer, and the best you can do is say, you know what, I'm really sorry it happened, but it's okay. Maybe we'll see you in future. That means the customer is terminating the relationship with you, right? They've closed in the case of like a bank account, for example, they closed their account and gone.
Hmm.
What purpose does it serve asking the customer to give you a negative, I mean, like to give you a rating at all? You already know their feedback.
Hmm.
And what is the purpose of sending them a survey? Nothing, right? It serves absolutely no purpose. In fact, it'll irritate them even further.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, it's like taking a feedback from a
Yeah.
life insurance customer who's lost his life and taking a feedback. We know that this is a problem, claims feedback. There's no point taking a claims feedback over there.
So
Correct.
why would you irritate them further by sending a survey at all and then bugging him
Correct.
to give you a response, right? It doesn't make sense.
Hmm.
Okay. On the other hand, people come and tell you, oh, but you're not taking feedback from customers who are unhappy. I said, naturally, I know if I know they're unhappy, why would I take their feedback?
But don't you
Right?
like, I'll have a follow-up question here as well. Sorry, I'm interrupting in between,
Sure.
but sometimes, a lot of times, this happens that once a person receives the feedback, then only he's able to give a negative feedback. Sometimes
Yeah,
it's
of course.
difficult for them to reach out directly to the organization
Absolutely.
and give a feedback or complaint, because till the time it's not a very negative complaint, people don't end up reaching out. What I've seen is a lot of people ignore even if they are dissatisfied.
I
But
agree.
if they receive a feedback form, then they give a dissatisfactory feedback.
I completely agree. And that brings me to the second point,
Yeah.
which is why you should always ask for feedback.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And there
Oh.
is a human at the other end of your interaction, the likelihood of somebody actually giving you feedback is higher. So ask for feedback. Don't ask for a rating.
Hmm.
Ask for feedback. Okay. Do not ask for a rating. If rating
Got it.
happens to be a part of that feedback, that's one thing. Okay. But ask for a feedback. I'm saying conceptually.
Hmm.
Okay. Ask for feedback. Always ask for feedback. I mean, what is the worst that will happen? Right? You'll have to deal with it.
Hmm.
Which anyway, that's the reason you've set up the system in the first
Absolutely.
place.
That's the reason we are there.
Correct.
Huh.
Right? So that's the second part. So what does this mean? This means that so if you follow these two principles, which is that A, I will consistently ask for feedback in order to improve.
Hmm.
And B, I'm not gonna ask for feedback just because I want 10% response rate. Okay, or I want a 9 number or a 10 number, I want my NPS to be 75.
Hmm.
No. I'm asking for feedback because I can learn more about my customer and what they want. And I'm asking for feedback because I need to know what's broken.
Absolutely. That should be the
Okay, if
agenda,
you
yes.
build for this system, it doesn't matter
Yeah.
whether you have bias or not because you've accounted
Hmm.
for it,
Excuse me. Yeah.
right? So if you may take feedback from customers who are basically in your system, right? If you're going to take, if I have an opportunity to talk to a customer who's lapsed
Hmm.
my policy, I definitely need to take feedback from them. But to do it in a survey doesn't make sense. I know they're unhappy.
Hmm.
I would rather pick up the phone, reach out, and talk to 10 of them and find out what went wrong. See,
Got
my
it.
objective always should be to improve experience. My objective is not feedback collection, is not my objective,
Hmm.
right?
Got
So
it. Yeah.
that's the system you need to build. Metrics play a role in it. It is not the be all and end all of CX.
Got it. So, you we were talking about, at one point you mentioned that NPS, CSAT, these shouldn't be just, the only matrices
Mm.
where you actually are measuring. There should be other matrices as well, like for example the ease of resolution and outcome oriented and these kind of things. So I want you to focus on a little bit on that how should an organization, how should a leader focus on that, how should that be a part of a culture, that yes, we are taking a rating, NPS, CSAT, everything, because these are defined parameters, but how should an organization shift towards those kind of calculation or matrices as well?
Again, this a little bit will depend on your evolution, okay? But
Hmm.
more it depends on what kind of leader you are,
Okay. Yeah.
okay? What is the metric that is most likely to drive you to action?
Hmm.
Should be that's it. That's the bottom line. For many organizations in the last, say, 15 years or so, that has been NPS.
Hmm.
Okay, because the number is granular, is easy to track, people understand it well. You can see shifts, movements, alignments, so it's very easy when you see when you implement a program and you see the number move. It's something that is not only easy to understand at a leadership level, but is also easy to present forward, present to an audience, show the worth of, show the value
Hmm.
of, right? And that basically means that I'm justifying my investment in something like this. So as a
Correct.
leader, it's easy to do that, right? But I think that now, and this is why I found it out of the matter. Okay, these metrics are no longer sufficient. Okay, what kind of leader are you? Are you a leader that runs largely on numbers, quantity, dashboards? Okay, is that your natural leadership style?
Hmm.
Okay, and if so, combined metric, and it's easy to create, right? Anyone in your business intelligence unit can create something for you that says, look, intuitively these are, or forget intuitively, through regression I know these are the factors that impact my customer experience at an overall level. Okay,
Hmm.
and therefore I'll combine those numbers into one and I'll track it like an index. Okay, but
Got
it's
it.
that's custom made for me. It's for me and my business. It's based on the numbers that I feel comfortable tracking, right? And as a, for example, as an insurance leader, I will want to track retention, I may want to track um, lapsation, I may want to track complaints, I may want, and these are the obvious ones. Okay, if I'm in a e-commerce business, I have a whole different set of metrics that I want to track.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, so these are metrics that you can combine along with your NPS number and do a numerical tracking of. Okay, if you may be a completely different kind of leader and say, and I
Hmm.
know CEOs who have done this in the past, they listen to say 20 customer care calls in a week, correct?
Hmm.
And that's where they draw their insights, and that's where they say, hey, listen, I think we need to prioritize on this, and these are the trends. Okay, or there are leaders who say, I'll meet 20 customers in a month, or I'll do this, or I'll do, it really depends on your leadership style. Okay, what's important is that it has to work for you. It can't become an additional task. It has to be something that
Correct.
you see as being value driven.
Got it.
Yeah. So the
So,
metrics can be anything, bottom line.
hmm,
They have to drive you to action.
absolutely. The end goal is something which needs to be suffice, right? If whatever you're measuring, whatever you're doing, it's basically a backtracking what everyone does, right? I look at the output first and then I come down in terms of seeing that what needs to
Yeah,
be measured and what needs to be done. The
correct.
process is set accordingly.
Yeah.
Got it. So, we've been talking a lot about resolution over here, Mira. Right. So just wanted to understand that how do you connect those feedback loops between the customers, employees, and even leadership to make this culture actionable?
Uh, okay. So the honestly, the only way to do it is rigor. Okay, and this is what the CX function can drive.
Hmm.
Okay, this rigor, this process, this setup, ensuring that action is taken, ensuring that people hear what you have to say, what the customers have to say, what you're saying on
Hmm.
behalf of the customer. That rigor is something the CX function can drive. Okay, and should be driving and should be held accountable for. Okay, if your company has a CX team, and if you have not heard or seen a customer case in the last, say, 5 days, you should be holding them accountable for it,
Correct.
right? And that's the rigor that the team can drive. I have worked in organizations where the setup can be different. Okay, so there are different kinds of, in my last company, for example, we had a steer co that was chaired by the CEO. So a
Oh.
quarterly meeting was run by the CEO,
Hmm.
okay, which focused only on customer feedback. It need not necessarily have been NPS feedback. Please note that. So NPS was the system
Got
we
it.
were following there.
Hmm.
Any feedback from customers that we were able to present in a coherent fashion was accepted,
Hmm.
right? And the CEO would then take action. It was run by a 5-member management committee team. So there were representatives from different parts of the business, including sales, operations, technology, etc., etc. And these decisions were taken, and then the outcome of those decisions was publicized across the company. So in
Oh.
our last year co, we discussed these issues that customer faced, and these were the decisions we've taken to move ahead and resolve these issues of customers. And from maybe 4 months down the line, you will no longer see these buckets of complaints appearing.
Hmm.
Right? Is an action that we drove. Right? So the
Correct.
whole company knew the amount of attention that was being given to customer feedback
Hmm.
and what were the actions that were being taken centrally to resolve these issues.
Got it. Yeah, because see, you don't know where exactly the complaint will flow in from or what department it is related to. So I guess it's not just a job of a CX leader to, capture feedback, work on the actionables, getting it resolved or something. Because see, coming down from a sales background, I know myself that there have been a lot of situations where a sales executive interaction is not that great. Right. So it shouldn't be a duty of a CX leader to resolve it. It should be a duty of a sales leader to get it resolved because there might be a training issue. There might be a, I would say a culture issue or any kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Right. So
Agreed.
that's this example is pretty great. I would say that if every quarter, every department is headed accountable in terms of getting those things resolved, so automatically, I would say, the entire process would move on a positive direction.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, again, this is a very, I would say, I love asking this question to everyone. Somehow at this point of time is pretty important as well because a lot of people nowadays are talking
I
about
think I know which question this is.
AI and automation, right? So I get very fascinated in terms of understanding from all the leaders out there because see all you hear at this point of time is that what is AI in your tool, what AI we need to implement, how is
Yeah.
something very different from the current AI we are using. So AI and automation, these are the two words which you'll see is flowing massively.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I think that there should be a culture, there should be a human connect which should be there. Right. So, how do you ensure the human side of culture doesn't get lost over here between that age of AI and automation?
I think it's a lovely question, and in fact, I would love an opportunity to talk about this. Okay. Um, so what I have slowly started keeping as my framework, and
Hmm.
this is honestly, AI is a beast that no one really knows. It's like that story of, is this a trunk and is this a leg, and no, actually it's an
Hmm.
elephant, right? And you don't
Hmm.
know. Different things are happening in different parts of the world. The framework that I'm using right now is for anything that I want to generate an emotion for.
Hmm.
I genuinely think it's better done by a human. Okay. Uh, I'm keeping it very basic. Okay. So I'm teaching students
I'm
right now.
I'm getting what you're saying. I'm
Yeah.
actually getting what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. Go on, go on.
So I'm
Yeah.
teaching students right now in a
Hmm.
college. I'm, visiting faculty somewhere and I'm teaching students and I'm realizing that students can learn from AI. I can teach using AI to some extent, but can AI inspire them? No.
Hmm.
Okay. That's my role. Okay. Um, Building rapport, humor, okay, salvaging a situation,
Hmm.
okay, through connection, through humanity. This is something AI can't do. So I would start now thinking about flipping the script. Okay, and we've lived with poor systems far too long.
Hmm.
Okay, press one for this, press two for that. I mean, that was broken from day one.
Hmm.
But we've accepted it, and the whole world has just accepted it for some strange reason, right? I mean, I know. I mean, the reason is obviously cost, but right, you have an opportunity to do better.
Hmm.
So now you flip the script. Can I, in India, for example, where voice app, the use of voice app is largely outside of the urban areas, is largely on voice. Okay. What if I was to build a contact center that allowed people to leave voice notes in a language of their choice, describing what their issue is?
Hmm.
Okay. And then used AI to connect them to an agent that could actually resolve their problem. So their first contact is actually with a human. Okay. And it is a sentiment in their voice note, the tone, the frustration, the level of anger, or maybe the level of acceptance, or just maybe it's a simple query. It is a sentiment that decides whether to connect them to a human or not.
Hmm.
Okay, so what if my contact center worked back to front and I started with a human being who was enabled by AI?
Got it.
How do you keep humans first in a system where our humanity is what allows us to build better customer outcomes? So we have to
Agreed.
start flipping that script a little bit and reimagining what the world could look like.
Hmm. Yeah, but because in nowadays, if you'll see that we've recently advanced a lot in terms of the AI tech and all, right? So recently, I was just exploring a lot of tools for ourselves and what exactly the people are using because you have to be there in the market seeing what exactly is happening. So I recently figured out a couple of tools where exactly you're talking to an AI, but you don't feel you're talking to an AI. Right. The entire AI is been, I would say trained in the entire, I would say, end-to-end scripting to everything what an organization needs inside an executive who's been talking. The only differentiation was that once you're talking to a human, right, from that tonality to pause to everything, that is something what I would say a human interaction is there. But once you're talking to an AI, you're getting an information what you're requiring. But sometimes that human touch is something what exactly a person is looking forward to. The AI
You
is,
use the term empathy early in the conversation.
yeah. So, the AI is sorry as well,
Yeah,
right? I'm not saying the AI is not sorry. The AI is sorry as well. But the kind of sorry which I'm looking forward to is not that kind of sorry AI is.
absolutely.
So, yeah, I get it what you're saying. But again, what I've seen, what I've heard from people, again, cost is a pretty big,
Of
uh,
course.
you know, I would say driver to moving down to these kind of lanes. And I'm saying that at this point of time, if you'll see, everything is advancing, so there might be a possibility that AI has that tonality to that punctuation to everything what a human being requires. So let's just wait if we move in that particular direction.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So Meera, again, a very interesting question, because I would say an every CX leader is a storyteller. Right. Whether it's you, whether it's anyone in the organization, they have multiple stories coming to them. Multiple, every feedback is a story. Every feedback is a journey. Right. So, I would say, if I talk about these internal storytelling, like if, whatever we are doing, so what does what role does this internal storytelling play in reinforcing customer centric values across the teams, right? Yeah, how exactly these basically change the interaction, how exactly these shape the culture across the organization over here.
So you are so right. Okay, storytelling is one of the most powerful tools that a CX leader can wield.
Hmm.
Okay, and I think while the functions have now sort of grown into different spaces, the it's heavily based on what market research does.
Hmm.
Okay, so market research, if you want to make an effective market research presentation to a client, for example, you're telling a story,
Hmm.
right? And you have all the typical tropes in storytelling. So you have the underdog, usually the customer, right?
Hmm. Generally,
And
yes.
yeah, and you're able to build, really you're able to build empathy for the customer through storytelling.
Hmm.
Okay, and that's its most powerful role. Okay, keeping the customer front and center is just so important. Okay, and storytelling is a great tool to be able to do this. Okay, feedback as a number, NPS as a number, or CES or CT, CSAT, or whatever it is, as a number is only a number. The minute that comes alive with what the customer went through, what they faced, okay, how our agents responded, how much empathy did they have, he actually said this to the customer, that makes a difference. And oh, there was such a beautiful example. One of the companies that I worked with,
Hmm.
the CEO bought a product, our own product, and had to go through the onboarding as though they were a customer. Okay. And, um, you know, the CEO came back and flayed us open. Okay. Because the experience was, I mean, acceptable, but not for a CEO.
Hmm.
Acceptable, I'm saying acceptable in a very generic sense, that as Indians, we expect processes to be broken and we expect service to be rubbish in many cases, even though I'm the one paying money.
Correct.
Okay. We settle for substandard a lot of the time,
Hmm.
right? And generally organizations build to that sort of bare minimum, because the bare minimum costs X and my competitors are paying X. I cannot be paying X plus Y.
Hmm.
And that's the bottom line, right? And it takes creativity and ingenuity to break out of that pattern and do things differently and pay X minus. It's
Hmm.
possible. It's very possible to pay X minus, but you have to break out of that mold of thinking,
Correct.
right? And that is where storytelling plays a role. That is
Hmm.
where you can say, listen, but that's not at all what the customer wanted in the first place. I mean, they landed up at your desk, but they came in wanting something else, dude, so it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
you know and what if we were to provide this instead? And that emotion, that aspect of bringing things to life, is something a CX leader can do beautifully.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, with the example was pretty great that the
Yeah.
CEO itself bought the product
Yeah.
and went through the entire process. Yeah, but didn't the organization get to know that, from the name and everything that it's the CEO itself?
Your guess is as good as mine.
Got it, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a very subtle way of saying a lot of things.
Yes.
So, coming down in terms of, because once you build a culture, there are a lot of challenges. There are a lot of, you have to sustain that culture. You have
Yeah.
to maintain that, process entirely. So, what are the most common barriers? What you've seen, that prevent CX culture from sustaining? Is it the leadership turnover, short-term focus, or is it something else?
The biggest barrier has always been short term focus. You're right. Okay. We tend to look for outcomes which are 3 months, 6 months. Okay, like let's create a project. How fast can you deliver it?
Hmm.
Not what can you deliver.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you ask the question saying, listen, this is the amount of money we have, what can you do with this money? What can you deliver in 5 years that will give us a competitive edge in the market? That will really, really change the lives of our customers and employees. We'll probably get a very different answer than if you ask the question, when can you deliver a good customer experience?
Hmm.
Okay. Short term focus is the killer of customer experience. And especially today, when I was starting out in my career, I had a boss, very inspirational lady, who told me that, Meera, I am so glad I'm 40 years old now. Okay. And I was 22. Okay. And she was like, because by the time you are 40, if we run at this pace, I'll be dead. This is what she said. Okay. And I kind of agree, right? Just to keep sane from a workload perspective or from a rate of change perspective, we cut corners and we drop things, and it's entirely human. And I do not blame the people involved for it,
Hmm.
right? There is too much going on. AI is a very good example, because I think if I were to devote 8 months to AI wholly and solely morning to night, I still will not understand what is going on in the AI world. And anyway, by the time the 8 months are done, I'll be outdated. What good outcome can you expect from your employees? What are you
Yeah.
expecting really? You have to stop and think that, okay, listen, no, your outcome should be in 5 years. How can I have a fantastic customer outcome that will really, really help me stand out in the market? Then
Hmm.
everybody can stop and breathe and say, okay, listen, AI is one tool we can use. My objective should be to get great customer outcomes.
Got it. Yeah, again, I would agree short-term focus is something which kills a lot because see, nowadays, the definition that time is money, the more any tool saves the time, the cost goes up.
Yeah.
Even if you see in the time of this Blinkit and Zepto, everyone wants everything very swiftly, right? But again, some things require time to be built with,
Yeah.
so see, I would say CX is like love. Right. It's a very simple definition, and love requires time. Love requires, and with time it comes, the trust and the respect which is
Yeah.
required. Right.
Yeah.
So it's a very straightforward correlation that if you have a great experience, you love the organization.
Correct.
Yeah, you love the product. So it's a very straightforward proportional thing that with time comes the respect and the trust.
Yeah. I
You can't
agree.
build it like, in one time go, oh, you met me today, you trust me and you respect me. So,
Yeah.
so that's the thing. So, the more the organizations understand that, it will be easier for them to build on that particular
Correct.
part as well.
Correct. And the other thing is that CX is the other thing that kills or does not allow CX to sustain, right? Is this mentality that customer experience is about fixing what's broken.
Correct.
That's support.
Hmm.
Okay. While customer experience teams typically take the lead in fixing systemic issues that lead to customer problems, that's not the objective. The objective should be to deliver fantastic outcome. The objective should be innovation. The
Correct.
objective should be beyond housekeeping, right? And
Hmm.
getting, and that again requires a leap of faith. It requires some imagination. It requires investments. It requires time.
Hmm. Got it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and this is
So
where this sustenance doesn't happen because you're not giving time to sustain.
correct. So, Meena, my next question would be like, you've been in BFSI since long. You've worked in a bank, you've worked in insurance, right? So, I would say BFSI itself a very, high pressure industry, right? And, once that there's a lot of high pressure, generally what I've seen is, culture shakes up,
Yeah.
right? So, how do you, make sure that the CX culture is there, built properly within these kind of high pressure industries?
It has to be a priority for the organization. Okay, it's not, this particular question that you're asking is honestly speaking not something that can be wholly controlled by a CX leader or by a CX team.
Hmm.
It has to absolutely be a priority for the organization. And that means that my CFO, CEO, my COO, etc., need to see value in it.
Hmm.
My job to show them that value.
Correct.
Okay. And that's what a CX strategy is built on. I need to show that I can build value using this function. And once they see the value, when they start taking action is when the organization starts moving in that direction.
Hmm.
Right, let me give you another example. In my last company, we took up an initiative that I'm actually really proud of, right? So we the entire management committee and the leadership band, the band below the management committee, makes it a point to own a branch, like a retail outlet, and they visit that branch once in a quarter.
Hmm.
Okay, listen to the employees, and then they go back next quarter. So the expectation is that they've resolved those employees' problems. And it can be anything. It can be like my bathroom is too small to, customers can't get past this button on my onboarding screen, to, when I go out, my distributors don't give me enough importance to, it can be anything.
Hmm.
Not
Obviously.
necessarily related to your function at all. So if you're a
Correct.
leader, say you're a leadership band person who's in charge of the legal function, even that person has to listen to these issues
Hmm.
and resolve them. So suddenly, because I have to go back next quarter, suddenly I'm accountable for so many different things in the organization.
Hmm.
And I learned so many different things. And I'm understanding how better the parts move, right? And
Got it.
therefore, I get better outcomes for employees and customers both. This is something that is sustainable because, from a cost
Agreed.
perspective, the cost is minuscule.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is something that's sustainable. So, when you create programs,
Actually.
you create them in such a way that they don't become a humongous outlay task. Customer experience has to be BAU. Otherwise, there's no point.
Hmm.
It has to be something that
Absolutely.
everybody does as part of their daily lives. That lens has to be, it's like putting on a pair of glasses in the morning and saying, okay, these are my customer lens, and am I seeing things clearly from the customer's point of view? And then I wear them the whole day. Everybody does.
Correct. It's not a one-man job to create a culture.
Yeah.
It's the organization entirely who does that thing.
So something like
Absolutely.
this becomes sustainable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there's a push and pull. Then the branch will call and say, sir, when are you coming next? Or
Yeah,
ma'am.
actually.
So then it becomes sustainable because there's an obligation to be met.
Hmm.
You know that it's having good effect, it's having good outcome. And it also builds culture. I'm having better connections, better accountability. Employee morale is higher. People are motivated, right? My field team gets to interact with senior
Absolutely.
leadership. So then it becomes culture.
Yeah, they feel valued. See, if
Correct.
someone from the management is coming and asking you that what problem do you have, there might be a possibility though at once, the executive hesitant because it's a senior employee. But once he sees him or her regularly inside that particular branch, it feels that you're connected to them. It feels that, they actually care about you. And within
Correct.
that care itself, I've seen a lot of people staying in the organization for a very long period of time because of this.
Yes.
Right. I myself was in a very similar culture once in an organization I was working with. So I was handling a branch over there. Right. So it was a mandate for a VP level person or a senior vice president level person to come to the branch quarterly to do meetings with the field executive.
Mm,
So
mm,
he used to be there behind, person on his bike in the same, I would say heat, in the same rain, in the same winter state. Where exactly he'll be going with them. He might not pitch to a customer. He'll just sit, observe that what
correct.
the executive is talking about. But at one point of time, the even the executive felt that what I'm doing, even he being a senior, he's doing it with me, though he's doing it once in a quarter, once in 6 months, but at one point of time, he's going with me. And
Correct.
within that conversation itself, there have been a lot of times when an executive talks to a senior management, he stays.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right. Yeah, and that is, I would say, one of the best culture an organization can show that, how many employees they had like 5 years back, and from that 5 years back, how many they do still have in the current point of time.
Yeah.
Right. That actually shows what the culture an organization has built.
Correct. Absolutely.
So my next question, if you're talking about culture over here, if you're talking about something, an organization takes over it. So if I talk about your journey, Mira, you've been, you've worked in a lot of organizations. So what was that one culture initiative which you're actually proud of, which actually made a difference? You know, like how teams think about customers within the organization you were working at that point of time.
So this is one that I just talked about.
Hmm.
But I want to give a little bit of food for thought for somebody else, because there's something that I think most of us miss um, as you become team managers, etc. So one of the things that I've done throughout my career,
Hmm.
in the last 18 years, is that I've ensured that my team visits customers.
Hmm.
It's such a simple thing. It is such a simple thing. I mean, we were working in BFSI, so we had the opportunity, right, to go sit in a branch and work.
Hmm.
Okay. But even then, we had to make sure that we were engaging with our customers in a way that was meaningful.
Mira, I lost you in between.
Stay in touch with what is happening
Yeah.
with
There,
your
there was a
customer.
lag, Mira. If you can just
So,
repeat again. There was a lag from your side, I guess. You
no
got
problem.
stuck.
I'll
Yeah,
repeat.
yeah, yeah.
So I think just this thing of whichever team I've worked with, I have insisted that the team goes out and meets the customer.
Got it.
Could
Yeah.
be in B2B, it is client visits, client conversations, right? Conversations with people who are influencers. Like there's a network of influence to, like, say, a procurement team, right?
Hmm.
Meet as many of them as possible. Have no agenda. Sit in a branch and work. Sit on the shop floor. Visit a factory, right? Go there, be there. Whether they're internal customers, whether you're end customers, it doesn't matter. But 2 days in a month, you have to do customer work.
Hmm.
And I'm not expecting a report. Oh, today I went there and then I did 2 hours of this. No.
Hmm.
Just go there, immerse yourself, and come back. Okay. And it just has such fantastic outcome. The team comes back with ideas. They're like, today I saw this, and like, why can't we do like this? And why can't we? Maybe we can't do any of it right away. That's fine.
Hmm.
And what we then did was we maintained a simple list of all the ideas that we got, right? And the minute we had any free time, every quarter we would have like a brainstorming session and say, hey, let's just open that idea list. Something will,
Correct.
snap, jump out at us.
Absolutely.
Just this practice led to so much innovation, so many great customer outcomes.
Hmm. Yeah, this is, see, at the end of the day, the designation is customer experience. Like till the time you're not meeting the customer, I don't think so you'll be able to capture the experience just because you're getting it from a customer on a, numeric or a verbatim
Yeah.
basis.
No, and I used to do this not just in customer experience teams. I mean, like I would take my IT guys
Oh,
to the branches, and like, I mean, whenever I had the opportunity, I would like drag someone along,
oh, nice.
right? And I would take team members, partners. I've taken so many of my like agency partners
Hmm.
people we worked with to, I mean, if you're creating advertising, like you were creating an advertising for young audiences, go sit in a college canteen,
Hmm.
right? There's just so many things you can do, and
Correct.
so many ways in which you can inspire people.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I used to do this with all my teams,
Oh,
and I
nice.
think it has great outcomes.
Absolutely, sitting there live, seeing people, you were absolutely correct that you get a lot of ideas, you get a lot of understanding what the current scenario is outside the
Yeah,
office, what exactly people need, what exactly people talk about. So that's actually something pretty great, right? So this again came as a piece of advice, right? This is something what I would say that what you were doing clicked for you. There might be a possibility the other people do it, it clicks for them as well. But apart from this, if I say, what would be the other, a couple of piece of advices as a CX leader you would like to, give it to the other CX leaders in terms of the CX focused culture and how exactly to maintain that culture and those kind of things. And my last question over here would be the reason I'm asking these two questions, together because these are very correlated,
yeah,
right? And so what inspires you personally when it comes to shaping culture and experience? Right. So your inspiration can be those suggestions or the pieces of advice and vice versa.
sure. Um, so the advice, one thing I already talked about, which is that
Hmm.
stay in touch with your customer.
Correct. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. And if you and ideally your management team is not doing it, then you should.
Hmm. Absolutely.
The second one, and which is a little more tailored to today's nuance, right, is don't be afraid to fail. Okay,
Absolutely.
try
Yeah.
things. And if you need to put in place a system or a process, I mean, many CX leaders will come back and say, but try करने के लिए तो पैसा चाहिए, right? You need money
Hmm.
and you need a budget, then ask for
Hmm.
it. Get it clear that listen, this is budget for experimentation.
Hmm.
It has huge potential for payoff, huge potential for reward, but it's also entirely possible that I will spend that money and I will learn along the way, but I may not impact anything in the next 3 months,
Hmm.
right? Get that clear, get that money, get the resources, and start experimenting, because you will not, in today's day and age, you cannot be afraid to try.
Correct.
Okay, so these are the two things that I would definitely like tell CX leaders to like give it a shot. Okay. Inspiration for this has come from many places for me. Staying in touch with customers. So honestly, I tell so many people that the only reason that I've survived this long in the corporate space is because the job that I do actually impacts human beings.
Hmm.
It changes people's lives, hopefully for the better.
Correct.
And that's like, from a CX function perspective, I really, really get a kick out of knowing that I have changed a customer's life for the better. Okay, and it's not about numbers. It's really not.
Hmm.
And that is the inspiration that I've always had, for this. And I think that should be the core purpose of the function. There are enough and more people to cross sell things and upsell things and do better sales and to get more revenue in and save money. And there are a lot of people who are already trained and probably much better at you than doing that.
Hmm.
Your job is to make the customer's life better.
Absolutely.
And that inspires me in itself.
Hmm.
Right. And the other thing that is inspiring me now, especially, is um, like I said, the rate of change is so high.
Hmm.
What's inspiring me is learning from young people. Okay, I deliberately sought out and took a position as a visiting faculty because I wanted to work with young people. And I think that the world is being built for them,
Hmm.
whether it is how you design a product or a process or a service or even your reason for existence.
Hmm.
The world is being designed for them right now, and you need to know what is going on. So that's something that I would really again encourage people to step out of their own boxes, get into some discomfort zones,
Hmm.
and do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Because till the time you're not taking any kind of risk, you're not taking any kind of a, jump
Yeah,
from a current process which you're doing, you're not different from the other person who's doing the similar thing,
Correct.
right? And to excel, I would say there should be a differentiation, there should be a USP, which exactly every organization should have to be, there in the top level, what exactly is to be required. This is actually very, great, Mira. And to be honest, this entire session was very different and very, I would say, culture oriented. It was again a very, I would say, this was more of a learning than a discussion, right? Because
Thank
for
you.
me as well, see, I talk to a lot of CX leaders. I not just CX leaders, a lot of leaders, within a day, within a week, within a month. But most of the time, what I hear is that, how exactly this output will come, how exactly this output will come, how exactly this output will come. But there are very less people who talk that, I want to create a culture, I want to create a process which exactly my team follows it rigorously, follows it
Mm.
in a manner where exactly they are there, they are doing it.
Yeah.
They are not just, it shouldn't just be a tick in a box. It should be a process which exactly people actually do it. And to learn about those things from you is very, it's really one of the best things what I've learned as a person in the CX industry. So
Wow. Thank
thank you
you.
so much, Mira. It's been great. It's been a very delightful discussion what I've had. And to whosoever is listening and whosoever will see this thing, I would just state it in a very simple manner that culture doesn't just support CX. It's basically something what creates it. Right. So, thank you so much, Mira, and thank you for being here for one of our episodes. And you definitely want you to have, be here again, impart more knowledge about, customer experience, culture, and all the particular parameters. And, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Jesh. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks
Yeah,
again for
same here.
having me. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye. Definitely, Mira. Thank you. Bye.